You often see these big capital words saying, we are not responsible for X, Y, Z, Y, Z. Like, they're basically not taking responsibility for anything. In Australia, that doesn't work, because in Australia, there are consumer guarantees. Your service must be fit for purpose, must be of acceptable use, and it must fit for the disclosed purpose, right? There's a bunch of guarantees that you have to comply with. You can't wriggle your way out of it. If not, you get fined by the regulator. And also, Australia has a unique law called the unfair contract terms, which is part of the consumer law. The unfair contract terms basically is a set of rules that prescribes what is unfair or fair in a contract. Long story short, you can't have unfair terms in the contract because they're a void, so they don't have effect, and you can also get fined for it, as of recent law reform. What is an unfair contract? It's basically any term that causes a huge imbalance between parties' rights, which is a very fancy legal word to say don't screw the customer, okay? You can't write terms that aggressively protect your position. You can't write terms that disclaim everything. Even though it's very tempting as a business to try to not take responsibility for anything, Australia doesn't allow you to do that. You have to take some risk. That's just the nature of the laws here. And it's good, it protects us as consumers, right? You don't want to be buying services that are trying to scam you. And lastly, control of investor. I'm going to spill some tips that no VC likes to hear. Control of investor just basically means knowing how much money you can take in exchange for how much shares, right? Often when you're a pre-seed or Series A, VCs, because you don't know whether the business model is actually going to work in the long term, the VCs are going to take a lot of risk. They'll take a big share of your business. The average 30-40% of your business for X million dollars, right? When you start out, it seems like a great deal, but as you scale, we realize that that big chunk that you sold to VCs is actually not going to be worth in the long term. So there's a lot of strategy at play. Lawyers can't really help you in terms of like what percentage you take. That's really a business call. But the key thing is that my ultimate tip is if you can afford to take less money, just take less money, right? Like if, let's say, they're offering 100 mil, but for 40%, think to yourself, do you really need 100 mil? Just maybe scale back to, let's say, 70 mil, 60 mil for a less percentage. Now, you might be asking, wait, isn't that not the same because the valuation is still the same? That's true, but valuation can always change, right? But the percentage, the shares that you give away won't change. So that's something to think about. So hopefully, these are just some practical tips. I didn't want to go down through like a bunch of